The galaxy was alive with anticipation. From the smallest asteroid colonies to the largest floating cities, every civilization was preparing for the momentous event that would define the century. News had spread through quantum networks, holographic transmissions, and starship messengers. Queen Lyra, the ruler of the Andromeda Alliance, would choose a partner from among the galaxy's finest. Her beauty was legendary, her mind unmatched, and her heart, many whispered, was capable of seeing greatness in anyone. For decades, civilizations had dreamed of this day, plotting elaborate schemes to win her favor. Across star systems, preparations were underway. The Altherians, known for their crystal-like skin and radiant auras, polished their gems and refined their technology to dazzle the Queen. Entire fleets of ships, gleaming and vast, were being readied for display. The Morin, shapeshifters who could assume the appearance of any creature, rehearsed grand performances designed to awe the Queen's senses. Even the nomads of the void, mysterious travelers who rarely interacted with the wider galaxy, sent emissaries carrying relics from dead stars, hoping to catch Lyra's attention. Everywhere there was competition, rivalry, and determination. Leaders argued about which gifts would be most impressive. Diplomats debated the best strategies for winning favor. Artists created works that stretched imagination and skill beyond anything ever seen. Poets and philosophers crafted odes, not just to her beauty, but to her wisdom. Every world wanted her choice to fall upon their champion. Amid this chaos of ambition and pride, there was a quiet station at the edge of a dying star system. Orbiting a dim red sun, the station had little grandeur to offer. Its walls were scratched and patched, the air faintly humming with the energy of old machinery. Outside, asteroids drifted lazily, and small mining ships glided silently, bringing minerals from barren worlds. Here, a human named Kale went about his work, unaware of the storm of attention sweeping across the galaxy. Kyle was an engineer. He was not a diplomat, a soldier, or a wealthy merchant. He repaired starships, tuned energy cores, and solved technical problems that had confounded even advanced civilizations. His hands were calloused, and his hair perpetually messy from spending long hours in the engineering bays. Despite his simplicity, Kale had a mind that was sharp and flexible. He saw solutions where others saw only obstacles. His intelligence was quiet, understated, but it carried a depth few could match. KL had no desire for fame. He did not dream of ruling planets or commanding fleets. He found satisfaction in fixing things, understanding systems, and occasionally sharing a laugh with colleagues. The galaxy, with all its wars, politics, and grandeur, often seemed distant and chaotic to him. Yet, even in his simplicity, Kayal held a quiet dignity. He treated everyone with respect, regardless of their species, status, or power. For him, kindness and curiosity mattered more than wealth or influence. The news of Queen Lyra's visit reached the station through the usual channels, a flickering hologram alert that seemed ordinary at first. Queen Lyra will pass through Sector 12 in 2 standard rotations. Scientists, engineers, and strategists required for consultation. For many on the station, it was a message of curiosity. For Kale, it was just another day of work. He adjusted a delicate energy conduit and continued his calculations, unaware that the coming events would change his life and the galaxy forever. When the Queen arrived, she did so in a ship of breathtaking beauty. Sleek lines of polished metal reflected the light of the red sun, and streams of energy pulsed along its hull in patterns that seemed almost alive. Lyra's presence was commanding, yet serene. Her hair shimmered with a light of its own, and her eyes, deep and intelligent, seemed to see beyond the physical world, into the essence of anyone she met. The ambassadors, engineers, and experts who had assembled expected a show of ceremony. They had rehearsed introductions, presented models, and prepared speeches designed to impress the Queen. But Kale was different. He did not bow, he did not fluster, and he did not try to impress. He simply greeted her politely and offered his assistance. Lyra noticed immediately. Among all the pomp and preparation, Kale's calm presence was unusual. He spoke in clear, simple terms, explaining the mechanics of the station's ancient engines and suggesting solutions to problems that had troubled others for years. He was precise, confident, and yet humble. He did not seek praise. He sought understanding. For hours they spoke. The Queen asked questions that others would have considered too basic or too risky. Kale answered them without arrogance, showing insights that others had overlooked. He proposed solutions that were elegant in their simplicity, demonstrating a balance of logic, creativity, and empathy. Lyra listened, intrigued, and soon the conversation became more than technical. They discussed ideas, philosophies, and the ways civilizations could coexist in peace. Word of Kale's engagement with the Queen spread across the galaxy, first in whispers, then in astonished announcements. Many could not believe it. How could a human, humble and unassuming, attract the attention of the Queen when ambassadors brought fleets, treasures, and rare cosmic artifacts? Even the most advanced commentators and AI historians paused, recalculating probabilities. Some laughed, some scoffed, many were offended. To them, it seemed impossible that someone without power or influence could hold the Queen's interest. But Lyra, in her centuries of wisdom and experience, saw something the galaxy had long ignored. She saw character, courage, intelligence, and a heart capable of understanding and compassion. Hale, meanwhile, remained unaware of the attention. He focused on his work, on solving problems, and on sharing ideas. He did not know that his calm nature, clarity of thought, and genuine kindness had become the talk of entire civilizations. He treated the Queen as he treated any colleague, with respect, honesty, and a willingness to learn. And this, Lyra realized, was rare beyond measure. As the day progressed, the galaxy's eyes turned toward the small station. Observers from countless systems monitored the interaction, sending updates back to their home worlds. Reports of Kale's insights and Lyra's reactions spread like starlight through the networks. Debates erupted. Philosophers argued over the meaning of the Queen's interest. Generals questioned whether intelligence and character could truly outweigh wealth and power. Merchants speculated on the potential consequences for trade and alliances. Yet, amidst all the noise, the Queen's decision began to take shape. Not in the flash of wealth, not in the grandeur of fleets, but in the quiet moments shared with Kale. She saw in him something she had not seen in centuries. A mind unclouded by ambition, a heart untainted by greed, and a courage expressed not through violence, but through honesty, thoughtfulness, and integrity. By the end of the standard rotation, the station had become the center of the galaxy's attention. Kyle, still unaware of the stir he had caused, finished repairs on a starship engine and prepared a simple meal. Queen Lyra watched him, her eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and curiosity. She had seen countless beings who sought her favor for power, influence, or recognition. Kale sought none of these, yet he possessed a strength that no weapon, fleet, or treasure could match. For the first time in decades, Lyra considered the possibility that her choice would not follow tradition. She wondered whether the galaxy was ready to understand that greatness could exist in unexpected forms. And as she observed Kale, speaking softly and laughing at a small technical mishap, she knew that the answer was clear, not to her alone, but to anyone willing to see beyond appearances. As the red sun dipped below the horizon of the dying star, the station bathed in a gentle, fading light. The galaxy beyond continued its preparations, unaware of the silent shift taking place.
Ambassadors planned their presentations.
Fleets polished their weapons. Artists finished masterpieces. But one human, working quietly in an old station at the edge of nowhere, had already begun to change the future. And Queen Lyra had noticed. The stage was set. The galaxy awaited a decision. And in the quiet of the station, amidst the hum of machinery and the glow of dying stars, Kale continued to work, unaware that his life and the galaxy's understanding of humanity was about to be transformed forever. When Queen Lyra stepped onto the observation deck of Kale's station, she expected courtesy, protocol, and perhaps some technical explanations. What she did not expect was a calm human mind that seemed to operate in ways far beyond the limitations of machines, fleets, and galactic politics. Kale, unaware of the attention he had drawn, looked up from a holographic display of energy flows and nodded politely. His eyes were curious, intelligent, and open, not clouded by fear, greed, or desire for approval. "Good day, Your Majesty," he said. His voice was steady, not overly formal, not rehearsed, just sincere. "I have been reviewing the energy core fluctuations you requested. The problem lies not in the structure itself, but in a feedback loop that has built up over centuries. With some adjustments, we can stabilize it entirely." Lyra raised an eyebrow. She had expected technical brilliance, of course, but there was something in the way he spoke, something human, thoughtful, and precise, that drew her in. She glanced around the deck. The room was simple, unadorned, yet functional. It had no embellishments, no unnecessary grandeur. It reminded her of the way some humans described their home planets: small, practical, full of life and purpose. "Show me," she said. She stepped closer, her presence commanding, yet not intimidating. Kale gestured to the holographic display. Light and energy streams twisted and pulsed in patterns, some chaotic, some harmonious. He explained the system's workings clearly, breaking down complex interstellar physics into a language even non-engineers could understand. He spoke not to impress, but to communicate. His words were honest, deliberate, and carefully considered. The Queen watched him carefully. Unlike other beings she had met, Kale did not embellish his abilities. He did not claim genius. He simply explained the system, identified the problem, and suggested a solution. As humility struck her, she had met countless leaders who demanded attention, rulers who expected to be awed, and scientists who hid their weaknesses beneath layers of prestige. Kale was none of these. For hours they worked, side by side. Lyra asked questions that tested his understanding, while Kale responded with clarity and patience. When a complication arose, a minor energy surge threatening to overload the system, Kale calmly rerouted power and stabilized the core. The room filled with a soft, steady hum, replacing the tension of the problem with a sense of accomplishment. "You see," Kale said, finally leaning back, "the system is old, but its design is sound. The failure is not in the structure, but in how we interact with it. Sometimes the simplest changes have the greatest effect." Lyra nodded slowly. She had heard similar words from great minds, but none delivered them with such quiet confidence and genuine understanding. There was no pride, no arrogance, just honesty and intelligence. It was rare to find someone capable of solving problems without seeking recognition, and rarer still to see someone who could make her feel like an equal in conversation. As the hours passed, their discussion moved beyond mechanics. They spoke of the stars, the planets they had visited, and the civilizations they had encountered. Kale spoke of humanity's simple ways, the importance of cooperation, the joy of discovery, and the strength that came from facing challenges together. He admitted the limitations of his species, but also the potential he believed humans possessed. Lyra listened, fascinated. She had met countless species that claimed greatness, yet many fell short in practice. Humans, she realized, were underestimated not because they lacked ability, but because their strengths were subtle, quiet, and adaptive. Kale embodied these qualities in ways that were hard to measure, yet impossible to ignore.
"You see things differently," Lyra said, more as an observation than a question.
Other beings rely on power, wealth, or influence. You rely on understanding. Kale shrugged lightly. Understanding allows us to see the best solutions. Power only gives you the ability to act. Intelligence and empathy guide how to act wisely. Her eyes softened. She had never encountered a being who could speak with such clarity and humility while still carrying the weight of wisdom. Many had tried to impress her with displays of strength, fleets of ships, and rare treasures, but none had captured her curiosity in the way Kale had. Word of the Queen's engagement with the humans spread slowly at first, through subtle reports to distant systems. Observers transmitted images and data back to their homeworlds, a queen conversing calmly with a human engineer, discussing energy cores and star systems with mutual respect. Initially, many dismissed the reports as exaggerations or errors. How could a human, simple and ordinary, draw the attention of the galaxy's most powerful and beautiful queen? As the news traveled, reactions varied. Some laughed, thinking it an amusing anecdote. Others were offended, believing that the queen had been swayed by charm rather than substance. Yet, across the galaxy, curiosity grew. Everyone wanted to understand why Lyra had lingered with a human, while fleets and treasures waited elsewhere. Scholars debated, philosophers wrote essays, and even artificial intelligences recalculated their predictions. Lyra, meanwhile, was unconcerned with the gossip. She focused on Kale, not because he was human, but because of who he was. In his presence, she felt a rare sense of freedom, the freedom to ask questions without judgment, to explore ideas without the need for ceremony, and to experience genuine conversation that transcended the trappings of status and power. During one discussion, Lyra asked about humanity's greatest achievements. Kale smiled, thinking for a moment. Humans have done many things that seem small compared to the galaxy, but each shows our ability to adapt, building cities in deserts, exploring oceans and space, creating art that inspires generations. These are accomplishments of cooperation and perseverance. We are not the strongest or the fastest, but we endure and innovate. That is our strength. Lyra nodded. She had met powerful civilizations that could conquer planets in a day, and brilliant species that could manipulate energy and matter. Yet their achievements often lacked empathy, cooperation, and humility. Here was a species underestimated by all, yet capable of resilience, creativity, and moral strength. Galactic exemplified it all. As the sun of the dying star dipped behind distant asteroids, casting long shadows across the station, Lyra realized something profound. She had been searching for a partner, not just for companionship, but for shared vision, mutual respect, and genuine understanding. In Kale, she found these qualities. He did not seek her approval or status. He simply offered his knowledge, his kindness, and his perspective. It was refreshing, rare, and compelling. Kale noticed her attention, but did not seem affected. He continued working on minor adjustments to the station's systems, focusing on practical solutions rather than seeking praise. Lyra observed him, appreciating his diligence and simplicity. It was a stark contrast to the grandiosity of ambassadors who awaited her favor elsewhere in the galaxy. Late into the cycle, Lyra and Kale moved beyond technical discussions. They shared stories of exploration, hopes for the future, and reflections on life. Kyle spoke of humanity's imperfections without apology, and celebrated its potential without arrogance. Lyra shared her experiences of ruling, the challenges of leadership, and the loneliness that often accompanied her position. In these moments, they connected not as ruler and subject, but as two minds exchanging ideas, learning, and growing together. Across the galaxy, the whispers began to grow louder. Observers noticed the unusual rapport. Fleets that had been prepared for display waited uncertainly. Diplomats froze in mid-gesture, unsure how to report developments. Scholars debated the meaning of the Queen's interest. The AI historians that monitored events calculated probabilities, only to repeatedly mark the situation as unprecedented. The galaxy had never seen such attention given to a human in such a manner. Yet, amidst all the noise, Kale remained calm and unaware. He continued to work with focus and care, demonstrating intellect, patience, and empathy. In doing so, he revealed the quiet power of humanity, strength that did not need to shout, resilience that did not need to dominate, intelligence that did not require proof through conquest or wealth. By the end of the cycle, the bond between Lyra and Kyle had grown. They were no longer merely queen and engineer. They were partners in thought, collaborators in understanding, and companions in curiosity. Lyra understood that the qualities she saw in him were rare in the galaxy. He represented not just the potential of one human, but the potential of an underestimated species. The galaxy, for its part, was oblivious to the magnitude of this realization. Leaders continued to prepare their displays of wealth and power, unaware that the most important factor in the contest had already emerged. Among the stars and fleets, Kale's quiet presence and unassuming brilliance had begun to redefine what it meant to be remarkable. As night fell on the station, the dying sun casting an amber glow across the decks, Lyra watched Kale make small adjustments to the engines, quietly humming to himself. She realized that the galaxy's greatest display of power was not in fleets or treasures, but in intelligence, empathy, and courage, the very qualities Kale embodied. And in that moment, she knew that when the time came to choose, her decision would not be guided by grandeur or influence. It would be guided by something far rarer, the recognition of true greatness in an unexpected form. Kale, a human, simple and ordinary by many standards, had already begun to change her perception of what was valuable, important, and worthy. The galaxy might not yet understand. Ambassadors might scoff. Fleets might shine with power, and artists might create wonders to awe her. But Lyra had seen the truth. Among all the beings of the galaxy, none had shown her a mind as brilliant, a heart as genuine, or a presence as quietly powerful as Kale. And for the first time, she considered that humanity, small, underestimated, and often overlooked, might hold secrets and strengths that even the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had failed to notice. The stage was being set, quietly and subtly, for a choice that would astonish the galaxy. And at the heart of it, the unassuming human engineer worked, unaware of the destiny that was quietly unfolding around him. The day of the decision arrived with a silence that stretched across entire star systems. Ambassadors, diplomats, and leaders of countless civilizations had gathered in anticipation. Fleets hovered above the palace world, their hulls gleaming in the light of twin suns. Rare treasures from the farthest reaches of the galaxy were laid out, their brilliance meant to impress, intimidate, and persuade. Every eye was on Queen Lyra, waiting to see whom she would choose. In the grand hall, the atmosphere was tense. The walls were adorned with banners representing thousands of species, each vying for recognition. Crystal lights refracted in the polished surfaces, reflecting the hopes, fears, and ambitions of every civilization present. The murmurs of nobles, generals, and diplomats created a low hum, punctuated by the occasional sharp gasp or whispered commentary. Yet, in the midst of this grandeur, one figure stood apart: Kale, the human. He had been summoned, though he had not sought the invitation. His eyes widened slightly as he took in the hall, the vastness of the palace, and the countless beings waiting for the Queen's proclamation. To him it was awe-inspiring, but he did not falter. He had faced impossible problems on the edge of dying stars, repaired failing engines, and solved puzzles that even the galaxy's most brilliant minds could not. Standing here among leaders and emissaries was daunting, yet familiar in the sense of being called to solve a new challenge. Lyra entered the hall with grace, her presence commanding yet serene. Every being present felt the weight of her attention, the calm authority she carried without effort. She paused at the center, letting her gaze sweep over the crowd before settling on Kale. The murmurs quieted as the attention of the room shifted. All eyes now focused on the unassuming human who had, against all odds, captured the Queen's attention. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Generals straightened, ambassadors clutched rare artifacts, and diplomats adjusted their ceremonial robes. Many thought this would be the moment when power and wealth would triumph, when the Queen would choose a being whose fleets, influence, or riches could reshape alliances. Then Lyra spoke, her voice calm and clear, cutting through the tension. "I have made my decision." A ripple of anticipation ran through the hall. All eyes turned to her, waiting for the proclamation. Kale felt his pulse quicken, though he tried to appear composed. He had not sought this attention, and yet he could not ignore the weight of the moment. Lyra's gaze met his. There was no hesitation, no doubt, only certainty. I choose Kale. A silence fell that was heavier than any roar or explosion. The entire hall froze. Diplomats froze mid-gesture. Generals lowered their weapons. Ambassadors dropped their prepared speeches. Even the AI observers, designed to analyze and predict behavior, went silent, unable to process the unexpected outcome. The room seemed to vibrate with disbelief. Some whispered incredulously, "A human? How could it be?" Others shook their heads, unable to understand the choice. Fleets that had been prepared for display remained suspended in orbit, their commanders unsure whether to react. Across the galaxy, messages flooded in. Recordings, transmissions, and alerts reported the unexpected declaration. Scholars debated its meaning. Philosophers speculated on its implications. Entire civilizations paused, trying to grasp the significance of a queen choosing a human over the mightiest beings in the galaxy. Kale felt all eyes on him, yet he remained calm. He had no desire for glory or recognition. He had not sought to impress anyone. Yet here he was, at the center of the galaxy's attention, chosen not for power, not for wealth, but for character, intelligence, and quiet strength. Lyra stepped closer. Her eyes held warmth and respect. "You may not understand it now," she said softly, "but it is not power, wealth, or influence that guides my choice. It is wisdom, empathy, and courage. Kyle embodies what is most precious, not only to me, but to the galaxy itself." Gasps and murmurs echoed through the hall. Many leaders struggled to comprehend. They had spent decades preparing to impress her with displays of strength and wealth, only to be overshadowed by a human whose achievements were measured not in fleets or treasures, but in intellect and integrity. Some felt insulted, others amazed, and a few quietly inspired. A Moraine diplomat, its form shifting nervously between colors and shapes, whispered to a nearby Altharian noble, This is unprecedented." "I do not understand it." The Altharian simply nodded, crystal-like eyes reflecting disbelief. "Neither do I. Yet the Queen is resolute." Kyle, meanwhile, felt a mixture of surprise and humility. He had never imagined such recognition, and the magnitude of the moment was overwhelming. He stepped forward, bowing slightly, not in submission, but in respect for the Queen and the responsibility her choice implied. Lyra extended her hand to him. "Come," she said. "We have work to do together, and the galaxy will need your wisdom more than it needs my expectations." As they walked through the hall, whispers and speculation followed. What did this mean for alliances? For trade? For diplomacy? For centuries, power had been measured in fleets, weapons, and influence. And now, one human, small, underestimated, and ordinary by many standards, had shifted the balance simply through intelligence, kindness, and courage. Outside the palace, fleets that had prepared for demonstration hovered uncertainly. Across star systems, leaders watched the unfolding events with growing amazement and apprehension. Many questioned whether the choice of a human would challenge their perception of what it meant to be powerful, brilliant, or worthy. And indeed, Kyle did not revel in attention. He was aware of the galaxy's shock, but focused on what came next. He had responsibilities, not as a ruler or a general, but as a partner to the Queen, and as a mind capable of contributing to solutions for the galaxy's challenges. He knew that the real work had only begun. The Queen led him to a council chamber where plans for exploration, defense, and diplomacy were discussed. Leaders who had once scoffed now listened carefully as Kale analyzed problems, proposed solutions, and suggested approaches grounded in logic, practicality, and empathy. His ideas were not driven by ambition, but by a genuine desire to create outcomes that benefited civilizations collectively. Over time, doubts began to fade, replaced by respect. Even the most skeptical generals found themselves intrigued by his strategies, which combined ingenuity with careful consideration for both allies and rivals. Diplomats recognized the subtle strength of his arguments, which were persuasive without being domineering. Scholars and engineers marveled at his ability to simplify complexity, seeing patterns and solutions that had eluded even the galaxy's most advanced minds. For the first time, many realized that power was not solely measured in fleets, wealth, or territory. True strength, they began to understand, could emerge in quiet ways through intelligence, empathy, and integrity. Kale's presence challenged old notions of superiority and demanded a reconsideration of what it meant to be remarkable. In private moments, Lyra watched him with admiration. She had chosen not for spectacle, not for ambition, but for a rare and enduring quality that few in the galaxy could recognize: the ability to understand, to create, and to inspire without seeking glory. Kale's unassuming brilliance was a reflection of the potential she believed humans, and perhaps all species, could achieve when they were underestimated and free to act according to their principles. As the cycle passed, the galaxy slowly adjusted. Reports of the Queen's choice became headlines, philosophical treatises, and even debates in schools and councils. Some species initially resisted the idea, clinging to traditions of power and hierarchy. Others embraced it, seeing a new model of leadership, partnership, and potential. Kyle had become a symbol, not of domination, but of human ingenuity and moral strength. Fleets were eventually recalled, treasures were returned, and ceremonies shifted focus. The galaxy began to look at humans differently. Previously overlooked, underestimated, and often dismissed, they were now subjects of curiosity, respect, and cautious admiration. Kale had shown that even a single human could embody qualities that could rival or exceed those of the most advanced civilizations. And through it all, Kale remained humble. He did not seek titles or recognition. He continued to study, repair, and create. He offered insights, solved problems, and guided decisions not through command, but through quiet intelligence and steadfast integrity. His example, observed by millions, began to subtly reshape the galaxy's expectations and beliefs. Lyra knew that the silence that had followed her announcement was temporary. Soon voices would speak, arguments would flare, and debates would rage. But the truth remained clear to her. Kale had shown the galaxy what they had failed to see for centuries. Greatness could be quiet. Wisdom could be simple. Courage could be unassuming. Humanity, underestimated and often overlooked, held the potential to astonish the universe. And as she watched him work, Lyra understood that the true challenge of leadership was not in choosing the most powerful or the most brilliant according to conventional standards. It was in recognizing the qualities that mattered most, qualities that could endure across centuries, civilizations, and challenges. In that moment, as the twin suns of the palace world bathed the hall in golden light, the galaxy realized a truth that would not be forgotten. Sometimes, the most extraordinary beings are those who do not seek to be extraordinary at all. Kale had changed the galaxy without a single display of. He had done it through thought, action, and character. And in that silent revolution of perception, the first ripples of a new era began. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Kale, a human who had lived a simple life repairing starships and solving engineering problems at a distant station, had become the center of attention for every civilization. Where once fleets, riches, and dazzling displays had been expected to win the Queen's favor, now a single human stood at the heart of an entire empire's admiration and curiosity. The ripple of Lyra's choice spread further than any fleet or message ever could, and the consequences were just beginning to unfold. At the Andromeda Alliance's capital, the Queen's advisors gathered to discuss the implications. Generals who had once relied on brute strength, diplomats who had thrived on intimidation, and scholars who had built careers around alien superiority were all forced to reconsider their assumptions. Kale, an ordinary human by most standards, had demonstrated insight, ingenuity, and compassion that surpassed the galaxy's expectations. Lyra observed the discussions quietly. She had anticipated shock and resistance, but she also knew that change required patience. The galaxy had to learn that strength was not always measured by fleets or power, but by intellect, integrity, and empathy. Kale's quiet brilliance was more revolutionary than any battle or conquest. Meanwhile, Kale himself continued to approach every challenge with the same focus and humility he had always shown. He did not seek to dominate discussions or assert authority. Instead, he listened carefully, analyzed problems logically, and offered solutions with clarity. The galaxy, slowly but surely, began to notice the difference. Humans had long been underestimated, dismissed as fragile or insignificant. Yet Kale's actions proved otherwise. One of the first crises he addressed was the stabilization of a failing star cluster near the border of the Andromeda Alliance. Previous attempts by alien engineers had failed to prevent gravitational collapse that threatened multiple inhabited planets. Kale examined the situation with careful observation. Using simple yet innovative techniques, he recalibrated the energy flow of key stellar cores, balancing gravitational forces with precision. Within cycles, the star cluster stabilized. Scientists and engineers who had doubted him were astonished. A human had done what the galaxy's most advanced civilizations could not. Word of his success spread rapidly. News feeds, communications arrays, and transmissions from every corner of the galaxy broadcast Kale's achievement. The disbelief of yesterday transformed into admiration today. Leaders who had once scoffed at humans began to consult them, seeking insights and guidance. Philosophers wrote treatises on human ingenuity. Scholars debated Kale's methods and foresaw the potential of humanity to influence galactic progress. Lyra watched all of this with quiet pride. Choosing Kale had not been a whim or an act of rebellion. It was a recognition of a fundamental truth. Greatness could be subtle, unassuming, and deeply human. In a universe obsessed with grandeur, humans offered something different: an intelligence tempered by empathy, an innovation guided by moral clarity, and a strength that did not rely on intimidation. The Queen and Kale began to collaborate on more ambitious projects. They worked to design interstellar trade networks that were fair and efficient, stabilizing regions that had suffered from conflict and neglect. They explored lost or abandoned colonies, bringing hope to civilizations that had long been forgotten. Through these efforts, humans were no longer seen as simple or weak. They were seen as contributors, problem solvers, and innovators capable of transforming entire systems. In public ceremonies, Kale remained modest. He did not seek praise, nor did he relish the attention. When congratulated by alien dignitaries, he often replied with a quiet smile and words of collaboration. "I am only doing what I can. Together, we can achieve more." These words resonated deeply. The galaxy began to understand that true leadership did not require domination or fear, but cooperation, intelligence, and trust. As time passed, Kale's presence inspired a shift in human perception across the stars. Colonies once overlooked received attention. Young humans were encouraged to pursue knowledge, diplomacy, and innovation. For the first time in history, humans were not underestimated. They were seen as a force of ideas and moral strength. The ripple of one human's actions began to influence an entire species' destiny. Yet Kale's influence was not limited to humans. The galaxy's other civilizations began to reassess themselves. The Altharians realized that beauty and wealth alone were insufficient. The Moray understood that flexibility and adaptability were only effective when paired with empathy. Even the nomads of the void began to engage more openly, recognizing that cooperation with humans could unlock opportunities previously ignored. Across species, Kale's example had become a catalyst for reflection and growth. Despite these achievements, Kale remained grounded. He often returned to the humble station where Lyra had first met him, revisiting the engines, the corridors, and the quiet hum of machinery. Here, he remembered the simplicity of his beginnings and the lessons that had guided him. For him, greatness was not measured by recognition or power, but by the ability to solve problems, help others, and act with integrity. Lyra admired him not only for his intellect, but for his character. She had chosen wisely, recognizing that while civilizations could be powerful, the essence of leadership was found in humility, courage, and vision. Together, they became more than ruler and companion. They became partners in shaping a galaxy that had long underestimated humans. Their bond inspired stories, legends, and new traditions. Across worlds, bards and scholars recorded the tale of the human who captured the Queen's respect and transformed the galaxy. Parents told their children that being clever, kind, and brave could be more important than wealth or power. Governments reevaluated their leaders' criteria for merit. And in quiet corners of space stations, ships, and colonies, humans, once overlooked, felt the stirring of pride and possibility. Even decades later, the impact of Kale's actions was evident. Planets that had been abandoned flourished. Alliances strengthened not through coercion, but through trust and collaboration. Knowledge spread more freely, guided by ethics and shared vision. And humans, long underestimated, continued to demonstrate their unique ability to rise to challenges, solve impossible problems, and inspire those around them. Kale himself never sought personal glory. He continued to work, repair, and teach, quietly influencing minds and systems alike. His humility, intelligence, and integrity remained constant, a beacon to those who followed. The galaxy came to understand that true greatness was not always the loudest, the fastest, or the strongest. It could be quiet, thoughtful, and deeply human. Lyra remained by his side, a queen inspired by the very human she had chosen. Their partnership demonstrated that leadership was not about domination, but about vision, collaboration, and the courage to recognize potential where others saw none. Together, they represented a new era in the galaxy, one where merit, character, and intellect were celebrated above all. The final triumph of Kale's influence was perhaps the most profound. The galaxy learned to respect humans not for their size, strength, or power, but for their mind, heart, and the quiet brilliance of their actions. Entire civilizations adapted, societies flourished, and the story of one human's intelligence and humility became a legend repeated across worlds. And in the quiet moments when Lyra and Kale would watch the stars from the observation deck, the galaxy seemed different, brighter, more hopeful, and full of possibility. A human had shown the universe that greatness could be simple, subtle, and enduring. The silence that had followed her announcement had transformed into admiration, inspiration, and a lasting respect for humanity. The galaxy had changed, not through weapons or dominance, but through one human's intellect, kindness, and courage. Kale had proven that even the most underestimated beings could shape history, influence civilizations, and inspire a universe to see beyond appearances. And in that new era, where humans were no longer overlooked, where intelligence and empathy were valued above all, the Queen and the human engineer stood together, partners in vision, shaping the galaxy in ways no one had imagined. Their story became a legend, whispered in corridors, taught in schools, and celebrated in every corner of the stars. A story of humility, wisdom, courage, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. The galaxy, once skeptical and competitive, had learned its greatest lesson. Sometimes, the smallest, simplest beings could achieve the greatest things. And Kale, a human of quiet brilliance, would be remembered for generations, not for power or wealth, but for the strength of his mind, the purity of his heart, and the courage of his choices. The stars themselves seemed to shimmer in acknowledgement, as if the universe itself recognized that a human had changed the course of history, and that the galaxy would never underestimate humans again.